A very warm welcome to the part of the session of environmental studies. In today's part of the session, it is the continuation related to the biodiversity. Especially in the last part of the topic, we have dealt with respect to the usage of the biodiversity and what are the threats that are arising. Only a partial topic was covered. And in today's part of the environmental studies, let me discuss related to the hotspots of the biodiversity and what are the significance. Let us get to know the concept. Hotspots of biodiversity. Hotspots of biodiversity. See the pictures which I have shown earlier. The hotspot, it refers to the place or a region which is mainly surrounded by the vegetation covers as well as the wild animals or flora and fauna constituted together, but there is a huge impact that has resulted in the negative impact or the destruction of the forest, leading to the disruption in the activities of ecological system. That we call it as, and let us get to know the definition. Hotspots are the regions that harbor a great diversity of endemic species at the same time they have been significantly impacted and altered by the human activities. They have significantly impacted as well as altered by the human activities. They are the harbor for the various diversities and impact is mainly caused due to the alteration mainly caused due to the human activities. If you take any developmental project, either in the case of the mining or suitably for building up any of the new roads or a town itself only, conversion of the forest land into various other commercial aspect of the land or the products to be obtained there, or commercial growth of the trees and all, which are meant for the industrial usages, and the demand is also more in that situation. Thereby, the harbor for various diversities, as earlier I have stated, it includes both the flora as well as the fauna component. They are at the same time, they are endemic in nature. They are endemic in nature. What is the term endemic it refers to? It is not like a native species or any other things and all. They are the type of the species which are introduced so that the population or the capacity, or we call it as a carrying capacity, or the growth of the organisms are hampered. That's why we have come across in this particular case like endemic situation. In order to know what are the different hotspots and all, it is that is getting to know the inference. The term here, the native species, the term native species, it refers to the type of the any plant or maybe any of the organisms or even and animals also, we call it as a fauna components, which includes birds, mammals, everything. They are vulnerable. They are vulnerable due to significant changes in environment, or what we call it as an ecosystem. Suddenly, if you cut the trees and all for any fodder purpose, or maybe if at all, if you might have come across for the pulp and paper or maybe for the wood itself only, utilize it for various categories of the purposes which I have listed out in the earlier stages also. This mainly it refers to the species which are incapable of competing or incapable of surviving against the abrupt changes that takes place in a sudden manner. That kind of the conditions we call it as a vulnerable, and their carrying capacity means capacity to adjust with the surrounding environmental conditions. They are not prepared yet, and capacity to adjust to the environmental conditions mainly depends upon their survival. In this context, I could able to say that the species which are vulnerable and which cannot be able to compete with respect to the other species which tend to adopt it, that kind of the species or the organisms we call it as a native type of the species. What are the causes of the native species? The one most important thing, if you might have observed it here, the mainly it is the introduction of the exotic species as well as illegal trade, introduction of exotic species, and therefore illegal activities or the trade that also causes, such as like poaching of animals for their skin or their hides and all. Okay, illegal trade which has happened to the greater extent, industrial logging as well as mining. Industrial logging as well as even the mining activities. In addition to this, you also come across the construction of the highways, dams or bridges. Highway, dams or maybe any walls or the bridges also. In the case of the ecologically sensitive regional area, which are those? We shall take up in the next part here. Okay. So, these are the various factors that contribute to the deterioration of the living organisms. They are present in a natural habitat, and thereby it has led to the deterioration and leading to the one of the hotspots in the world. Now, as earlier I have stated, what are the different hotspots of the biodiversity? Before knowing to the hotspots of the biodiversity, we also have that India as a mega diverse nation. India as a mega diverse nation. Usually it accounts for 8% of the world's biodiversity population. %8 of the world's biodiversity, and it also accounts for the 2% of the Earth's surface. Classified into 4 type of the zones, completely tropic in nature. We have majority of the summer season, it is hot in nature, no winter. And subtropic condition. Subtropic conditions characterized by the summer as well as even the part of the winter. Subtropic. Next set of the category, if we are going to take, it is related to temperate. Temperate, a warm summer and prolonged winter. This kind of the condition we call it as a temperate condition. Next we have Arctic condition. Arctic conditions means it is related to the pole region, we call it as a polar region, mainly characterized by the prolonged or the predominant part is winter itself only. The summer kind of the seasons are very much low or less in shorter summer span and longer severe winter. Okay, hot in most of the year, here this is hot in most of the year. A part of the winter you have, this is only a shorter in nature. Arctic means it's the opposite of the subtropic, where you have a prolonged severe winter and short duration of summer. So these are the different categories that normally we deal across the categorizations of the components of the biodiversity that tends to exist across the various parts of the globe. If I know what are the diversified nation, now can I bring some of the species which are present in the Arctic to the tropic region, or from tropic to the temperate regions or subtropic regions? That part of bringing up of all those organisms, they have an adapted capability towards the different climatic conditions. Okay. If you suddenly bring any of the species or interchange of the species that tends to take place, results in declining or capability to adapt to the surrounding environmental conditions. That has led to the extinctions of the species. Same thing it has happened due to the the excess of the killing of the organisms, maybe from either a plant or maybe the birds or any animals or aquatic ecosystems. It has rendered them to be extinct in nature. They cannot be again brought back into the life. Only through the aid of some of the biotechnological methods we can bring it back. Normally it is highly difficult and it is a laborious task or the process to bring it back. And based upon this, India as a mega diverse nation, normally 33% of the life forms is one of the most 33% of the life forms. You can come across here 33% of the life, percent of the landmass, there is a one conditions. And there are 47,000 species, and of the plants 47,000 species of the plants and 81,000 species of animals. Species of the animals. And it also includes the mammals, bird, reptile, insects. Okay, there are of the different species. And finally, it has comparatively restricted in nature. So it is only in the restricted region. Only they can able to adopt that particular region. If you bring back to that, no, it is not highly impossible for them to survive. It becomes very much difficult. And finally, there are different categorizations. We call it as the Western Ghats and Western Himalayas. We have the various categorizations like classifications of the regions, the forest cover or the grass covered land or the swamp or the marshy places to be one of the asset of the nature's ecosystem. And here, if you come across as a diverse nations, there are some of the endemic species in India. What are those? Agastya Malai hills, Silent Valley, and new Amarabalam Reserve in the Western Ghats, Periyar Network in the Western Ghats, and Eastern and Western Himalaya. And endemism means they are relatively low in nature. Only 44 species of the Indian mammal have range that is confined entirely within the Indian territorial limits. And their significance, especially in the Western Ghats, are lion-tailed mac, then Nilgiri leaf monkey, Nilgiri leaf monkey. We also have brown plant civet, Nilgiri tar, so these are the hotspots, or what we call it as an endemic species. And with the endemic species, the hotspots of the biodiversity, there are different biodiversity hotspots in the world. There are different hotspots biodiversity. Maybe in the India, if you take it, there are different hotspots. We call it as an Eastern Himalayas. In the Western Ghats, there is also a wide range of the green coverage distribution, and in that we have some of the reserve forest or area which are completely restricted for any of the illegal activities or even for the mining activities also. Only after the environmental impact assessment, if it has been done in a proper manner, then we can able to get all those particular permissions, whether it is profitable or the feasible without disturbing the surrounding ecological habitat. That is one of the most important concerns. And in the Western Ghats, they are mainly characterized by 49,219 plant species, 49,219 plant species. Out of this, 1,600 are during the span of 1972 to 1985. What is the reason here due to the declination means set of the activities which does not allow them to survive for a longer rate of the period. The lifespan or the expectation are China as well as even the Indian regions, the Himachal Pradesh, some part of the Uttarakhand as well as Jammu and Kashmir to the native species which has rendered, that is a cat-like an animal, which is the red panda, a slow moving but excellent tree climber found in the Himalayas region and upper part of the northern as well as southern part of the China, Burma. Feeds on the bamboo, fruits, birds, eggs, occasionally on small animals, and they are in a part of the animal trade itself only. Similarly, if you take in the case of the black buck also, antelope, it's a brown with a coat with a white underparts and patches around it, mainly found in Madhya Pradesh. It is being hunted for the spot and the flesh skin, as I have told earlier for them. And next, slender loris is also a primate. They are the large kitten, 250 to 800 grams. It has a long lymph, normally found in Kerala, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu region, and in Andhra Pradesh in the southern part of the India. And it is also an endangered species. You utilize it for the pet trade as well as for usage in the traditional medicine also. They use it for this traditional medicine also. These are the activities which are rendered to be less part of the biodiversity hotspot. And what are the conservation methods that I have already told that sustainable yield. Preservation mainly refers to complete protection of the forest without any hamper or damage to the whole region or the area. That we call it as a conservation type. Let us get to know what are the conservation aspects, maybe for the utilizations or even for the animal interference. which causes any harm for the native. Authority has made the conservation of both the flora as well as the fauna component, which are interdependent and interrelated to each other. They cannot live one without other. So flora and the fauna, they have the intersymbiotic relationship also. Okay, both of them get benefit to each other. So there are different strains, you can observe it in the pictures, either maybe in the case of the small microorganisms like a blue-green algae or the cyanobacteria also. So these are the certain set of the components that you might have come across for it. Okay, what are the conservation methods? What are the conservation practices that we have come across, and how to deal with the conservationist type of the approaches? These are very much important, and the application of the conservation is mainly due to protecting the environment, first foremost thing, from the pollution, and protection of the environment from the devastations or the deleterious effects caused by the unscientific utilization of the natural resources, and to use the resources in a minimal manner, planning for an efficient usages, and fate of the pollutants or the contaminants which gets into the cycle of maybe any biogeochemical, maybe a carbon or maybe a nitrogens and everything that affects the both animals, plants and the whole ecosystem itself only. These are the 5 essential things to be considered for a part of the conservation. Okay, with this, let me wind up at this stage. Till then, we shall take up for the next part of the topic, and the next part of the topic is conveyed by my other colleague. So, still then, stay tuned for it, and thank you one and all.